Today we're going to be talking about front country LNT practices and ethics. You're going to have a basic understanding of LNT ethics and principles specifically in the front country setting and what the front country means. We're going to talk about different scenarios and settings where these practices are most applicable in that front country setting. Let's define what front country means. The term front country encompasses a relatively wide range of places. They're typically on the fringe of a city or town, and anywhere from rural, suburban, or even urban places like a city park. An important part is that there's definitive medical care available within a few hours, whereas backcountry travel, you may be 6 hours, 12 hours, or days for medical care. Campsites and trails are often full service. There's clearly defined and marked trails and access points. They're well mapped. There may be posted rules. There's often parking lots and easy access to well-maintained roads. Campsites are usually established with running water, bathrooms, showers, and electricity. During a front country trip, you probably don't need to bring nearly as much equipment with you as you would on a backcountry trip, since you're only there for a couple of days maybe on an established campground, or you're only there on a day trip. Front country preparations. Even though you're only gone for a short period of time, it's still important to bring enough food and water for your day. I prefer to bring about 30% more than I expect that I'll need, just in case I wind up there a little longer than I expected. Furthermore, it's important to have the right amount of first aid with you. For short day trips, you can buy these small, pre-made first aid kits, and these are nice to have even on a quick jaunt, just because you never know and they might come in handy. You should go through all of your first aid kits regularly to make sure that none of the items on the inside are damaged or expired. Of course, if you're going on a longer front country trip, sometimes up to 10 miles or more in a day, you should bring a little bit extra just because you're going to be farther away from your car. Also, if you have a larger group, it's nice if someone has a larger first aid kit or if everyone is carrying a little first aid kit for themselves. I highly recommend that everybody carries athletic tape or compression bandages with themselves and learns how to do a basic ankle wrapping technique. Knowing how to correctly wrap an ankle can mean the difference between struggling for an extra couple of hours to hobble out or even calling in rescue services because you couldn't walk yourself out. And of course, be sure to bring any medications, including epinephrine, insulin, glucose, or anything else you may need. Carrying an emergency blanket and an emergency whistle on slightly longer day trips can also be very useful in the off chance that the worst case scenario happens. It's also very important that you tell someone where you're going, even if it's just a quick little day trip. Because again, on the off chance that something happens, letting someone know that you're not home at the correct time could be the difference from somebody coming to look for you in a couple of hours versus a couple of days. Now let's talk about trail and campsite usage in the front country. When in the front country, stick to well-worn designated trails and campsites. Trail threading like this happens when people start to blaze their own trail, and it disturbs flora and fauna and causes erosion. Social trails and shortcuts should also be avoided for the same reasons. This large ponderosa may eventually fall down due to people walking around the roots and cutting them off to make an easier path. In addition to it causing erosion directly, the tree itself is helping prevent erosion, and as the tree is damaged, it just furthers the problem. Private property should also be respected. Don't travel in areas where you don't have permission to do so or the right permits. Responsible fire usage. Campfires in the front country are likely unnecessary. However, if you're at a designated campsite or somewhere similar, use the designated fire spots and fire grates. If that's not available, at the bare minimum, you should be using durable surfaces or rocky outcroppings to build your fire. Do not over-harvest firewood Take only what you need. Any firewood harvested should be dead and down and no larger than the size of your forearm. Pay attention to any current local laws, regulations, and restrictions on fire usage in your area. These are set in place for a reason to protect the forests as well as us. Make sure all fires are completely put out before you leave them if you do start a fire. Okay, let's talk about waste disposal. Many front country settings will have established pit toilets, bathrooms, or porta potties for use, and you should always use these if they are available. If they're not available, digging a cat hole 200 feet from water is the next best option. Otherwise, if you're close enough, you can also just wait until you get home. You can rarely visit a front country setting without seeing litter and garbage around of some sort. Make sure to pack out anything that you pack in. You should not be leaving behind any sort of waste or garbage. Not only is it an eyesore to see, but it's also damaging to the local ecology, and these things can take centuries, if not longer, to break down. Carry out anything that you find or anything that you brought in and dispose of it properly, either at trailheads with designated garbage cans or back at home. You should also be careful while eating food out on the trail. Crumbs and scraps left on the ground should be avoided, and especially large amounts of food. The local wildlife does not need to be fed by you. Waterways and riparian zones are especially sensitive, and any waste disposal should be avoided in these areas. Any soaps or liquids or chemicals should be dumped at least 200 feet away from any waterway. Sharing the trails. In the front country, you're likely to encounter other people. They may be on foot, they may be on bicycle, horse, or some type of ATV or dirt bike. It's important to know who has the right of way. Bicycles need to yield to both pedestrians and horses, whereas people need to yield to horses, just because they're most likely to spook and they can't easily step off trail to make way for somebody else. If you see anybody else on the trail, just be sure to step aside and let them pass. Give people a heads up if you're approaching them from behind as not to spook them. You should also keep your volume down, not playing loud music or shouting. You don't want to intrude on other people's experience. Many people choose to bring their pets along with them on the trails. In this case, it's important to understand any local rules and regulations regarding pets in parks and front country trails. Pets should be kept leashed, especially around other people's pets. Just because your dog is friendly doesn't mean mine is. It's safer for animals to be kept on a leash just in case. Be sure to pick up after your dogs as well, as it's considered littering if you don't. It's a huge eyesore to other people traveling on the trails. If you're one of those people that bags the poop and then throws it into the wood, stop that. Don't do that. That doesn't do anything. If you're the type of person that bags the poop and then leaves it to pick up later, at best case scenario, it's temporary littering, and you're still detracting from other people's experiences. LNT principles means that you're trying to have the least impact on the ecology of the land as well as your fellow travelers. Respecting flora and fauna. Hopefully while you're out, you'll have the chance to observe many animals out in their homes. Remember, this is their home. Therefore, you should treat it like you're the guest and they're the host. Try not to damage their homes whenever possible. You should also keep your distance and never follow animals. Animals expend a lot of extra and very valuable calories fleeing from humans on a daily basis. Wild animals should never be fed, and they should never be acclimated to humans. This is actually quite dangerous for them, in addition to becoming a nuisance to us. The saying, "a fed bear is a dead bear," can apply to many different animals. This is because when an animal becomes too acclimated to humans, they can easily become a problem, either just by being a nuisance, by digging around in your garbage and trash, or chewing into your food bags and tents, or by even being dangerous. You should also not pick and damage flora. Leave pretty plants and flowers behind for others to also admire. Foraging should also be done responsibly as not to disturb or damage the local population. Unless it's an invasive species like this mullen. Then rip it out. It doesn't matter. Leave it cleaner than you found it. The old scout saying of leaving a campsite cleaner than you found it can be applied to many different settings. Generally, it means that aside from doing your absolute best to respect the land, that it's worth sometimes taking that little extra step to go above and beyond. Don't upturn rocks and logs, and if you do, just put them back. Don't dig trails, trenches, leave fire pits behind, or build forts. Any fire pits or forts that are built should be dismantled and renaturalized so nobody knows you were ever there. When possible, pick up any extra trash that you see, because you may be the only person that will ever pick it up, otherwise leaving it there until the next lifetime. Again, this applies to things like damaging local flora and fauna. Unnecessarily damaging plants, like carving into trees, should at all costs be avoided. Not only is it unsightly, but it can severely hurt the trees. The cambium of the tree, which is the area between the bark and the inner hard wood, is the most important part of a tree. Too many carvings or stripping too much bark from a tree can actually kill the tree. This is called girdling in many cases. So what have we learned today? We now know to plan ahead and prepare. You should know the area you're visiting, any laws and regulations or restrictions, and planning for the worst case scenario by packing everything that you need and telling people where you're going. Self-efficacy by being well prepared and knowledgeable before heading out on the trail is often more sustainable than not. Always stick to the trail and respect flora and fauna in the land.